Hello, welcome to this short illustration on how the RBI's new liquidity instrument, that is a standing deposit facility, works. And we know that the RBI's liquidity management operations and which are done under the liquidity adjustment facility or the LAF. It works in two modes. The first one is the liquidity injection. That means whenever the RBI feels that the banks need money or there is liquidity scarcity with the banking system, RBI injects liquidity through instruments like repo operations, time repo operations, etc. So this is called a liquidity injection. Similarly, on the opposite side, when the banking system has abundant liquidity, okay, the situation is abundant liquidity, the RBI performs liquidity absorption. And for that there are several instruments like the reverse repo operations, variable rate reverse repo operations, and other sometimes often the long time instruments for liquidity absorption. So basically these are the two modes of liquidity operation. Now the entire liquidity operations of the RBI, that is the RBI is conducted through its well-known mechanism called liquidity adjustment facility or LAF. And there are basically two ACE instruments for LAF which we are familiar already. The first is known as the repo operation, which is not here now. It has been stopped from February 2020 onwards. So the repo operations, under which the RBI gives overnight loans or overnight funds or one-day loans to the banking system, is now not operational, but still the repo rate is there. And similarly the opposite side, there is the reverse repo operation. Here the RBI takes one-day deposit from the banks, and in this situation understandably there will be a lot of excess funds or liquidity banking with the banking system, and both are overnight facilities and fixed rate facilities. Because the repo rate is fixed, the reverse repo rate is also fixed. Okay, the repo rate is fixed. Similarly, the reverse repo rate is also fixed, and we call them as overnight facilities, or in other ways, overnight fixed rate repo or overnight fixed rate. Now we are going to examine the various instruments of the RBI's liquidity adjustment facility. So the instruments are short-term instruments, not long-term instruments like long-term reverse repo operations. So there are 6 short-term instruments, and the most often used one is the 14-day variable rate repo operation, and similarly with the variable rate reverse repo operations. And here remember that when we hear about the variable rate instrument, the interest rate of this instrument will be determined through an auction. The participating banks will be offering the interest rate or they are demanding the rate of interest under repo and reverse repo. Okay, remember the variable rate means the interest rates determined through auction. Okay, and now the second one is variable rate time repo or variable rate time reverse repo. The tenor here is 13 days, or from overnight to 13 days, and these instruments are used for fine-tuning operations according to the RBI, the second one. And the next one is the most popular one. When you are hearing about reverse repo, this is the instrument you are specifying. So this instrument is known as fixed rate reverse repo. It is an overnight facility. So two overnight facilities, the most popular one which were used in the past by the RBI, the repo and the reverse repo, and this is that reverse repo. The overnight one, the interest rate is fixed, like 3.5%, okay, and it is operated on a daily manner. Okay, only few instruments or liquidity instruments are running daily. Remember, this one is running daily. Okay, and the next one is an important one, the marginal standing facility, which is an emergency liquidity facility. Here the RBI provides funds to the banking system. Okay, when a particular commerce bank doesn't have enough funds, or they doesn't have enough government securities to cover the SLR, So in that case they cannot get the ordinary facilities. Okay, so here they can use the marginal standing facility. Remember, the interest rate is higher than that of the repo rate, and this is an emergency liquidity facility, and it will be operational for operational daily, and will be operational on Saturdays, Sundays and holidays. So this emergency liquidity facility is an AS one working daily. Okay, its purpose is that no bank will be facing any liquidity problem in India, even if it is on Saturdays and Sundays, on holidays. So that is the significance of marginal standing facility. Remember, both fixed rate reverse repo and marginal standing facilities are daily facilities, or they are overnight facilities. One is for liquidity absorption, on the other hand the marginal standing facility is for liquidity injection. Okay, and the next one is, fifth one is foreign exchange swap, which we are not mentioning, and the next one is the most important one, that is the standing deposit facility, which has been rightly introduced by the RBI, which is operational from April 8, 2022 onwards. It allows the RBI to absorb liquidity. Remember, it is a liquidity absorption instrument, okay, from banks if the banks have excess liquidity, and that also without giving collateral in return to the banks. That means if the central bank or the RBI is taking deposits from the banking system, since banks have excess liquidity, in return the RBI will not give any treasuryable or any other securities. Okay, that is the significance or uniqueness of standing deposit facility. That feature we will discuss soon. And now we are going to examine the current liquidity situation in the economy. Why the standing deposit facility has been introduced now. Okay, and that fact, you should derive from the current liquidity situation. And this small diagram, it's a bar diagram, shows the turnover from three important liquidity operations or liquidity instruments of the RBI. The first one is repo. We mentioned that there is no repo operation right now. The RBI is not giving funds to the banks under 1 day or overnight repo. The next one is reverse repo operation. Okay, that is liquidity absorption instrument, and the next one is a marginal standing facility, which is a liquidity injection instrument. And from the diagram you can see this net situation, and the liquidity scenario in the economy is dominated by the RBI's reverse repo operations or absorption of liquidity from the banking system. So the RBI is tremendously absorbing liquidity from the banking system, or in other words banking system, a huge amount of or huge volume of liquidity. And the same thing we can get from this table also. Here from March 14 to March 27, the liquidity operation of the RBI is dominated by reverse repo operations. There is marginal or small amount of marginal standing facility turnover as well. That means banks were using marginal standing facility, but that turnover is quite insignificant compared to the reverse repo operation or liquidity absorption operation conducted by the RBI. Remember, the situation in the economy is dominated by excess liquidity banking system, and there is heavy absorption or huge domination of the reverse repo operations by the RBI. So the RBI has introduced the standing deposit facility after a long time. It was announced in 2018. The government has also introduced, it has also amended the necessary legislation for the introduction of the standing deposit facility, but it is only right now the RBI is introducing it has made effective the standing deposit facility instrument. And now what is standing deposit facility? The standing deposit facility introduced by the RBI is a collateral free liquidity absorption mechanism. Remember, this is the terminology. It is a collateral free liquidity absorption mechanism. There is no collateral involved when the standing deposit facility has been used. Okay, and that aims to absorb excess liquidity from the commercial bank system into the RBI. Okay, and we are going to see what are the main features of the SDF. SDF is a liquidity absorption facility through which the RBI accepts excess funds to the banks and gives an interest rate called SDF interest rate in return. The RBI gives an interest rate in opposite to reverse repo operations. So both operations look similar. The purpose is almost the same. The RBI will not give any collateral like government securities while accepting the deposit from the banks. So this is the uniqueness of SDF. If there is collateral exchange in the case of reverse repo operations, okay, there is no collateral involved under SDF. The SDF will be for one day. It is an overnight operation. Though higher tenor, the RBI is announced that for the time being the SDF will be for one day, that is an overnight facility, but in the future RBI may think of launching long time SDF. The facility became effective from April 8, 2022 onwards. The advantage of SDF is that enable the RBI to absorb liquidity without providing government securities as collateral to banks. Okay. Now we are going to discuss the significance of SDF. Okay. Now under reverse repo, banks will get government securities in return when they give excess cash to the RBI. Okay, that is the significance of reverse repo. In contrast, here the inconvenience with this arrangement, with what arrangement under reverse repo, is that the RBI has to provide securities every time when banks provide funds. Whenever the banks provides funds to the RBI. In the case of SDF, there is no need to give any collateral. So that is the advantage of what we can say in SDF. The same thing we are going to see here when we are making a comparison between SDF and a reverse repo operation. Here is the SDF, and on the other hand here is the reverse repo operation. You have to see the objective of SDF and reverse repo. Objective is the same: liquidity absorption. When the banking system is abundant with excess liquidity, RBI can use both reverse repo and SDF. You know, the purpose of both these instruments are the same. Okay, but the difference comes next. In the case of SDF, there is no collateral, whereas in the case of reverse repo, there is collateral. So the reverse repo is overloaded. It's working like, you know, is working heavily. So in that case, the RBI has to constantly supply government securities as a collateral when it is accepting deposit from the commercial banking system. But when it is using SDF, there is no need. The RBI is completely free. And regarding the time period, that is also very significant. You know, both instruments are overnight. Okay, and the interest rate at present is 3.75%. You know, as of April 8, 2022. On the other hand, the interest rate is 3.35% in the case of overnight reverse repo. Remember, there is an interest rate comparison 3.75% as on April 8, 2022 for the standing deposit facility. When the banks are providing liquidity to the banks under the standing deposit facility, the interest rate is 3.75%, but the same bank is given excess funds to the RBI under the reverse repo operation. You know, the interest rate is 3.35%. The banks understandably will opt for the SDF, which was higher interest rate. The RBI has customized or fixed the SDF rate at a higher rate compared to the reverse repo operation to encourage banks to opt for the SDF, so that RBI need not give any collateral. Okay, so that is a policy of the RBI. RBI understandably prefer banks to use SDF instead of the reverse repo operation. We can see that in the future what will happen. Definitely bank will go for the SDF operation. And now we are going to see the features of SDF. Okay, and who can participate in the SDF? All institutions that are eligible to participate in the liquidity adjustment facility can participate in the SDF scheme as well. So which are the institutions which have the eligibility to participate in the LIF? The first is the scheduled commercial bank, including the regional rural bank. You know, there were the public sector banks, the private sector banks, the foreign banks, plus the regional rural banks, the small finance banks. Okay, many of the small finance banks are scheduled commercial banks, and similarly several payment banks also obtain the scheduled commercial bank status, so they can avail the LIF. Similarly, they are incorporated under the SDF scheme, they can avail the SDF scheme as well. Similarly, the cooperative banks, you know, the urban cooperative banks and the scheduled state cooperatives bank, which are the core banking solution facility, all are also eligible for the SDF scheme. So these are the participants, you know, who can avail this SDF facility. And regarding the rate of interest, tenor, and the working time, the rate of interest is 3.75%, but it will be decided by the RBI from time to time. That is the main feature about the interest rate. For the timing, it is 3.75%, which is 25 basis points below the policy rate, okay, of the SDF. And regarding the tenor, that means time period, it is an overnight facility. If needed, the RBI declared that it will introduce longer facilities. And regarding the working day, it is working all days including Sundays and holidays, and between 17:30 hours to 23:59 hours, and would be reversed on the following working day in Mumbai. And what is the CRR and SLR treatment? Regarding the CRR and SLR treatment, the RBI says that deposit under SDF are not eligible to be counted under CRR or SLR, and how this transaction can be conducted. And this is done through the eCuber facility of the RBI. Remember, the eCuber is the core banking solution of the RBI. Okay, it is the core banking solution of the RBI. The overnight SDF will be operated under straight through processing mode. Under STP, the bits would be settled automatically and immediately on receipt of eCuber system. And now we are going to see the RBI's liquidity framework after the launch of the SDF. Okay, the SDF was already launched, and now what will be the short-term liquidity framework of the RBI. The sixth one is the standing deposit facility, which is operational 8 of April 2022 onwards, which is a daily facility, like the marginal standing facility, like the fixed reverse operations. But we saw that in future the standing deposit facility will dominate as a daily liquidity absorption facility with the fixed rate repo, because here is a higher rate of interest compared to the interest you can get from the fixed rate reverse repo operations. And now we are going to see the policy corridor, how the monetary policy corridor of the RBI has been changed after the introduction of the SDF. And this is the monetary policy corridor. We can see for the monetary policy corridor, it is an area between the marginal standing facility and the reverse repo rate. Okay, and between this upper bound is the marginal standing facility, the lower bound is the reverse repo operation, according to the fine, or what we can say, fair policy of the RBI's monetary policy implementation. The call rate should ideally move between this corridor, or the corridor set by the two bounds, the upper bound of marginal standing facility and the lower bound of reverse repo. Remember, reverse repo is the rate at which the RBI takes funds or accepts funds from the banking system. If the banking system has excess liquidity, on the other hand, the marginal standing facility is the interest rate the RBI charges from the banking system. If the bank system need immediate money or emergency liquidity, so this is the MSF, this is the reverse repo rate, and the call rate should ideally move between these two, and this is called the corridor. This is the corridor. The significance of the corridor is that the call rate is the most important indicator that shows the liquidity position of the economy. So the call rate should ideally move between this MSF rate and repo rate. There are several policy implications why call rate should move between this corridor or within this corridor, which we are not going to discuss right now, because we are concentrating on SDF. Okay, remember, you have to keep it in mind the structure of this corridor, how the call rate move between these two. Okay, and remember, the reverse repo rate is going to be insignificant in future. This lower bound may be going insignificant because in future the SDF may get domination. In that situation, what we are going to tell is that this lower bound of SDF, rather the reverse repo rate, will be replaced by the SDF. Okay, now we are going to see in the next diagram. So SDF implication on the corridor, how the corridor structure may change with the launch of SDF. Now the reverse repo operation, its interest rate is 3.35%. Okay, but the what we can say, the SDF interest rate is 3.75%. So this is going to be insignificant. The banks may be getting they may be parking their funds using the SDF. So this SDF will become the new lower bound, and the what we can say, it will form part of the corridor. Okay, so this will be the corridor instead of this corridor structure. Okay, so the new corridor will be between the MSF and SDF. The MSF rate is at 4.25%, the SDF rate is at 3.75%. so there is a 50 basis point gap between the lower bound and the upper bound. And that's all about this topic of standing deposit facility. Hope you have enjoyed this class. Thanks for listening.